Hey guys, all right, I want to talk to you about the next step in your research, which is narrowing your two perspectives. So I want to show you 3 example mirror boards from my A-level students that can show you exactly what I mean by perspective statements. You can think of these similar to arguments, but I think if you use the word perspective statement, it can help you craft them a little bit more easily. So this first example I want to walk you through is about sexism in South Korea. So someone asked the question, is sexism being normalized in South Korea? And her two opposing perspectives were obviously yes and no. Like, yes, South Korea is becoming a bit more sexist for XYZ reasons, or no, South Korea is not becoming more sexist because of XYZ reasons. Those reasons are sort of cemented in perspective statements. All your perspective statements will either start with yes or no, as you can see here. Now, these sources, there's more sources here than you have because it's a longer paper. So I don't want you to look at this and think, my God, I don't have that many sources. That's fine. You may not have 6 perspective statements that you cover in your paper. You could have anywhere from, I think, 4 to 6. But I want to show you some examples. So Solman, with her yes side, let me try and zoom in a little bit. So she's looking at sexism again in South Korea, and she said, yes, it's being normalized because of its Confucian roots. She's saying, yes, sexism is being normalized because of sex education in that country. Yes, it's being normalized because of the prevalence of sexual violence against women. And yes, it's being normalized because of workforce standards. So all of these arguments are somewhat debatable, right? It's a statement that whoever believes this perspective would sort of agree with, but it could be challenged on the other side, right? You could look at that and say, okay, this person's saying, yes, sexism is being sort of cemented by the workplace. Somebody else can come in and say, no, it's not. So perspective statements are debatable, but they help narrow that perspective, and it comes from the actual research. So all of these perspective statements were written after everything that came below it. All of this reading was done first, and then it gets categorized into each sort of smaller look at the topic. Those looks being, okay, well, what does sexism look like in the workforce, education, history, for example. So all the reading comes first. On the other side, Solomons no perspective statements are no, it's not being normalized. South Korea is not becoming more sexist because there have been all these recent waves of feminist action in the country. And then secondly, no, it's not being normalized because there's been this push of legal activity from women in the country to instate specific laws. So these are the statements that Solomon pulled from her research. I want to show you another example. A bit less organized, in a sense, fewer texts, and they're not fully written out. So I could show you how these would be written. So this paper, Sadie's paper, is about factory farming, which you guys know, hopefully, is large-scale farming. Takes place across the world. And Sadie's asking, is that large-scale farming, is its efficiency worth the environmental risk? So on her yes side, she said, yes, it's worth the risk because it creates jobs. So that could be written out as a full sentence, as you saw before in Solomons. You can see here, yes, because the prevalence of yes, because, no, because, full statements. Sadie here just has the short phrase. On your mirror board, you can do either. The reason I'm making this video is because you need the full statements written out when you start to outline. And once you watch Ms. Aguilar's lesson, I think you'll see why you need to hear this first. But on your mirror board, you can simply put the phrases if you'd like. So is factory farming worth the environmental risk? Yes, because it creates jobs. What do you have here? Yes, it's worth the risk because it's creating new sustainable development in agriculture. What some businesses are doing is more sustainable. Yes, it's worth the risk because it leads to food security for those eating the food. On our other side, the no side, is it worth the environmental risk? No, it creates antibacterial resistance. I think that's in like cattle farming. I haven't read all these sources of SADIs. But she said no, it leads to antibacterial resistance. No, it causes water and air pollution, which I'm sure some of you probably went to straight away when you heard the topic. It's not worth the risk because it creates cancer in the outer lying communities due to some of that runoff and pollution. I'm not sure what she means by productivity here, but I think you can see the picture, see the resulting statements. Lastly, I'll show you one more example. Show you Kayla's. Oh, that's from last year. So you already have in your mind that you're going to do this again. That's right. Okay. So Kayla's paper this year is about abolishing the death penalty. So her perspective statements are phrases, but you can see how the statement would be created. So should countries abolish the death penalty? Yes, because it doesn't deter crime. Here's all the sources that support that. Should countries abolish the death penalty? Yes, because it's unethical. Should they abolish the death penalty? Yes, because they're often wrongful convictions. Wrongful executions. On the no side, and hers is probably closer to the source amount that you guys will have. Also a little bit less developed than Solomons. So should countries abolish the death penalty? No. She said countries should be able to sort of define their own belief systems. Her question kind of asks if the UN, or the way she wants to look at the topic, kind of asks if the UN should get involved in countries having the death penalty. So that's why she says, no, they shouldn't abolish it because countries should be able to choose. I think for extreme cases, so she said countries shouldn't abolish the death penalty because it helps sort of punish extreme criminals, which I think is what a lot of supporters of the death penalty say. So looking at these three examples is really to show you some of the thought work that you need to do on your research. A lot of you probably have 12 to 14 sources right now. You probably have little pockets of focus areas. When we talked in our conferences, I could see a lot of, small strands sort of beginning. But for some of you, I talked to you when you had only 5 or 6 sources. So I'm hoping that seeing these examples, you can go to all of your material and say, what are the patterns here? When, like I said, you start with this, right? You start at this level of reading and all your sources are kind of spread out, but then you start to group them using these kind of shapes. And the reason that we do this work on Miro is because you can physically grab sources and sort them by idea, right? Here are the 3 sources that talk about the ethics of the death penalty. Here are the 4 sources that talk about antibacterial resistance and why that's bad, So you're kind of working backwards. Like you have the bottom of your pyramid and we're working up to becoming more specific. In class today, because I'm filming this, Wednesday? In class today, we drafted our questions. So hopefully by putting your question at the top, looking at your sources, you can kind of collapse in on the middle and say to yourself, what organizing ideas and patterns do I see that I can craft into perspective statements? If you want to use this as an example, I would probably just pause different sections of this video and kind of look closely at some of these statements. Even just seeing these examples, I'm hoping, is all the instruction that you need. It's kind of a hard thing to learn. When I start talking to you guys about scale and distance, it's kind of abstract. Hopefully this tech tool can help make it less abstracts, but it's still kind of a difficult concept to wrap your mind around. So when we have conferences, we're going to have some next week when we start talking about your outlines. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, to try a couple perspective statements. You could have a few things listed here and we can talk through which one is the most effective, because this is the first large research project that you've done on your own. So just try your best. It's not something that I can more effectively describe in a setting like this. It's going to work best in a conference. So let me know if you have any questions about this, but I just wanted to sort of define this term perspective statement for you and show you some examples.